What if I told you that the best way to grow your business in 2026 is to stop managing your marketing entirely?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive, like especially for operators who are, they're used to having their hands on every single lever. But that is actually exactly where the math is pointing us today.
Right. And welcome into the deep dive. For you listening, we have gathered just a fascinating stack of sources from this week. This is spanning April 13th through April 17th, 2026.
Yep.
We're pulling insights from Shopify, Search Engine Land, TechCrunch, Axios, and Search Engine Journal. And really, our mission today is to figure out what happens to your business when the major tech platforms just systematically remove all your manual control knobs.
Yeah, they're basically just taking the steering wheel and driving the car themselves at this point.
Exactly.
Because across marketing, advertising, and just general business building, we're in the middle of a massive structural shift. Like for the past decade, your competitive edge in the digital space, it was all about micromanagement, right?
Oh, totally. Tinkering with everything.
Exactly. It was about tweaking manual bids by a few cents or uh, adjusting exact match keywords, obsessing over individual ad placements. But that era is effectively over.
Yeah.
The new edge is no longer about micromanaging the execution. It's about providing the best possible inputs and then just stepping back so the automated systems can handle the heavy lifting.
I really want to unpack this idea of inputs because it sounds, I don't know, a bit abstract.
Sure.
Let's ground this in a real human story before we get into the heavy tech algorithms. So on April 14th, Shopify published this case study about an entrepreneur named AC Hampton and his company, Supreme Ecom. And the numbers here are just staggering.
They really are. It's wild.
He grew a dropshipping business to $1.8 million in just 6 months.
Yeah.
And then he parlayed that into a 43-person education and software company where his students have collectively generated over $50 million.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal trajectory.
Yeah.
But what makes this source so compelling, I think, isn't the revenue itself.
Yeah.
It's the methodology underneath the revenue.
Right. Because let's be entirely honest here. When you hear the word dropshipping, it usually comes with a pretty heavy dose of skepticism.
Oh, absolutely.
It evokes this image of a flashy, get-rich-quick scheme selling cheap plastic junk. But Hamden's approach is actually a masterclass in business strategy, specifically in how to test inputs.
Yes. And that is the core aha moment for the listener right there. Hampton isn't using dropshipping as like an end state business model. He's using it purely as a validation vehicle.
Right.
It's a low-friction, highly reversible way to test product market fit in real time.
Think of it like a chef wanting to open a restaurant. The old high-risk way of doing business is signing an expensive, highly restrictive 10-year lease on a brick-and-mortar building.
Yep.
You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a kitchen renovation, and you basically just pray the neighborhood likes your food.
Which is a massive, irreversible bet.
Exactly. It's huge. But Hampton's approach is more like launching a temporary weekend pop-up tent. You're serving a limited menu, you're seeing if there's a line around the block, and you're just figuring out what people are actually willing to pay for.
And you're doing all of that before you ever sign a lease. I mean, for a small or medium-sized business, an SMB, the golden rule emerging here is that small, reversible tests will always beat expensive certainty.
Always.
When you run a dropshipping test, you're rapidly cycling through different inputs. You test different product images, different customer language, varying price points. And if the pop-up tent flops, well, you haven't bankrupted the company.
You just fold up the tent.
Right. You fold up the tent, change the inputs, and try a new menu next weekend.
You avoid getting bogged down in the heavy machinery of fulfillment and warehousing until you know for an absolute fact that the demand exists.
Exactly.
But, and here is where this gets complicated for you listening. This test and validate mindset, it isn't just a clever growth hack anymore. You have to adopt it because the platforms you use to run these tests are actively taking away your ability to do things the old way.
Yeah, the testing grounds are fundamentally shifting under our feet right now.
Right.
The search engines, the social networks, they're actively ripping that manual steering wheel right out of the car.
Which is perfectly captured by these rapid-fire changes reported by Search Engine Land this week. I mean, it feels like every single day a tech giant is retiring a tool we used to rely on.
Oh, it really does.
Case in point, Google just announced they're forcing the retirement of dynamic search ads, or DSA. Starting in September, they're migrating eligible setups directly into AI Max.
Which is a huge milestone. I mean, for a long time, DSA was a staple for digital marketers.
Hold on, let me interrupt real quick. For the listener who might not be, deep in the weeds of Google Ads every day, can we do a quick ELI 5, like explain it like I'm 5, on what DSA actually was and why this retirement matters?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So dynamic search ads were basically a semi-automated tool where you would give Google your website, right?
Right.
And Google would scrape your pages to match your site's content with what people were searching for. But you still had a fair amount of manual control over the guardrails.
Mm.
You could set maximum bids, you could exclude certain pages, you could literally dictate the exact descriptions in the ads. It was like a partnership between you and the machine.
So it was like a classic stick shift tool. You still felt the gears engaging.
Precisely. You felt the gears. But Google is moving everyone to AI Max now. And AI Max takes over the bidding, the targeting, the placement across YouTube, search, display. It even generates the creative assets for you. It's a complete black box. But the data from Google claims that when the full feature set of AI Max is used, advertisers are seeing an average 7% lift in conversions, or conversion value, at a similar efficiency.
Which is wild. And it's not just Google doing this. OpenAI made news on April 17th by rolling out ads to free and go users in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
Yeah, that's huge.
They're taking conversational AI, which, let's be honest, we've treated as a research tool, and they're turning it into a legitimate emerging media channel. And if you add to that, the projections showing Meta is on pace to surpass Google in global ad revenue this year in 2026.
Yeah.
And that's largely driven by Meta's incredibly aggressive push into fully automated AI campaigns.
The trend is just undeniable at this point. The platforms that reduce the friction of campaign setup by basically automating the optimization, they are winning the revenue war.
I understand the platforms are making more money, but I have to push back a bit on behalf of the business owner. Isn't this terrifying?
How so?
Well, you mentioned it's a black box.
Right.
A 7% lift on AI Max sounds great in a corporate press release, but you are completely at the mercy of an algorithm. Like if a campaign suddenly tanks overnight, you literally don't have a manual lever left to pull. How is a business owner supposed to sleep at night with that level of lost control?
No, it's a fair question, and it's entirely natural to feel that anxiety. It really does feel like a loss of agency. But I would argue this is actually liberating if you shift your mindset.
Liberating. Okay, explain that.
Because the job of a marketer or a founder is no longer to sit in a dark room babysitting bids in a digital auction. That was always a race to the bottom anyway.
True.
The machine can calculate micro-probabilities millions of times a second. You can't compete with that, so you just have to stop trying.
So if the machine is doing all the math, I feel like my only job left is to be the creative director. Is that where this is going?
That is exactly where this is going. Your workload shifts entirely back to what AC Hampton was doing, right? Focusing purely on the inputs. If AI is a Michelin star chef, you can't micromanage how it chops the onions.
Right.
But you are entirely responsible for the ingredients you hand over. If you hand the AI chef rotten tomatoes, you are going to get a terrible meal.
Okay, I like that. So what do good ingredients actually look like in this context?
Well, good ingredients mean you are providing cleaner, faster loading landing pages. You're writing incredibly clear, differentiated brand positioning. And most importantly, you are feeding the system strong, accurate conversion signals.
Let's define conversion signals, because I think a lot of people probably assume a conversion just means someone clicked an ad.
Oh no, a click is a terrible signal. A basic conversion signal might be someone filling out a lead form.
Okay.
But a strong, high-quality conversion signal is connecting your CRM, your customer database, back to Google or Meta and telling the AI, hey, not only did this person click and not only did they fill out a form, but 3 weeks later, they actually signed a $5,000 contract.
Wow, okay.
When you feed that specific data point back to the algorithm, the AI learns what a truly valuable customer looks like, and it just goes out to find more of them.
That makes a lot of sense. You're basically training the black box by giving it the exact end goal you want it to optimize for. But let's look at the flip side of that. If the machine's success relies entirely on the quality of the ingredients you feed it, it stands to reason that the machine is going to aggressively punish bad ingredients.
Oh, 100%. The tolerance for error in the digital ecosystem is effectively dropping to zero.
And the raw data really backs that up. So TechCrunch reported on Google's ad safety report this week, and the numbers are just wild.
Yeah, they are.
Google blocked a staggering 8.3 billion ads in 2025. That is a massive jump from the 5.1 billion ads they blocked in 2024. But here's the piece of data that really caught my eye. Despite blocking over 3 billion more ads, Google actually suspended fewer advertiser accounts. That feels like a total contradiction.
It does sound like contradiction, but until you look at the mechanics of how their Gemini-powered AI systems actually operate now.
Oh.
Think about how moderation used to work. You would publish an ad, it would go live, maybe it was a bit shady or violated a policy, and then a few days later, a human reviewer or a basic algorithm would catch it. The damage was done, so Google would suspend your entire account as punishment.
Right, it was very reactive enforcement.
Exactly, reactive. But now, Google relies heavily on Gemini to do proactive screening. And Gemini doesn't just read the text of your ad, it literally simulates the entire user journey in milliseconds.
In milliseconds.
Yes. It crawls your landing page, analyzes your images, cross-references your claims against historical scam vectors, and evaluates the intent behind your offer, all before the ad ever goes live.
So it catches the bad ingredient before it ever hits the frying pan.
Yes, exactly.
Because the bad ad never actually runs, the advertiser hasn't technically harmed the ecosystem yet. So Google just blocks the ad rather than dropping the hammer and banning the whole account.
That's it. But the real takeaway for you listening is that the AI gatekeeper evaluates your inputs instantly and ruthlessly. There's absolute zero tolerance for sloppy, creative, mismatched landing pages or misleading claims.
Right.
If your inputs aren't high quality and policy safe from the very start, you literally cannot play the game. You won't even make it to the starting line.
This shift toward pure execution, it really aligns with some fascinating reporting from Axios this week. So they analyzed Morgan Stanley's Q1 2026 earnings calls,
Okay.
and they found that 25% of all S&P 500 companies specifically mentioned a quantifiable business impact from AI. And this wasn't that vague corporate speak where a CEO says, we're exploring AI synergies.
Right. Not just buzzwords.
Exactly. This was concrete. It was companies saying, we used AI to write our marketing copy, and it demonstrably lowered our customer acquisition costs by X%.
No.
That is up from just 13% of companies reporting real impact a year ago.
The maturity curve is just incredibly steep. We have definitively moved out of the theoretical phase.
I equate it to the auto industry. Like, for the last 2 or 3 years, AI has been the flashy concept car spinning around on a turntable at the auto show.
Yeah.
Everyone takes pictures, everyone debates the futuristic design, but you couldn't actually drive it to the grocery store. But now, in 2026, AI is the reliable, boring, daily commuter vehicle. It's no longer about the hype of the technology, it's strictly about the execution.
Yeah, the hype cycle's dead. The execution cycle is here. And that reality demands a massive shift in how small businesses actually operate on a daily basis.
Which brings us to a huge practical problem. If you're an SMB listening to this, you don't have a giant corporate marketing department. You don't have an AI engineer on staff. So if execution is all that matters, how do you actually keep up with generating all these high-quality inputs?
Well, the answer lies in the consolidation of the tools themselves. We're seeing software platforms merge capabilities at an unprecedented rate.
Yeah, TechCrunch had a piece on April 8th covering Canva's recent acquisitions of SimTheory and Oro that illustrates this perfectly.
It really does.
Now, historically, Canva was just that neat website you used to make a quick flyer or like an Instagram graphic. But with these acquisitions, they are moving aggressively beyond basic design. They're integrating agentic AI, robust customer data management, and full-scale marketing automation.
They are essentially building an entire marketing department inside a single interface.
Let's pause on that term agentic AI. We hear generative AI all the time. That's the system that generates an image or a paragraph of text when you prompt it. But what makes an AI agentic?
Okay, think of generative AI as an intern. You ask the intern to write a draft of an email, they hand you the draft, and they wait for their next instruction.
Right.
Agentic AI is more like a project manager. You give it a high-level goal, like launch a spring sale campaign. And the agentic AI breaks that goal down into tasks. It decides to write the email, it generates the graphics, it segments your customer list, and it actually pushes the send button at the optimal time for each user.
Unbelievable.
And it does all that without needing you to approve every single step. It has the agency to act on your behalf.
That is wild. And Canva explicitly framed this move as extending their platform from just generating an idea all the way through to publishing the campaign, optimizing it, and measuring the results.
Yep.
So the future of workflow for a small business isn't duct taping together 10 different pieces of disconnected software. It's moving to a unified system where the friction is completely removed. You go from make the asset straight to ship the campaign in one continuous motion.
But if we accept that reality, that platforms like Canva are automating the creation and platforms like Google and Meta are automating the auction, it introduces a really critical tension point for the business owner. And this is addressed brilliantly in a piece from Search Engine Journal published on April 13th.
Oh, right, the article about measuring pay-per-click performance when AI controls everything.
Exactly.
Because if I can't see the gears turning in the auction and an agentic AI built the ad, what exactly am I measuring? How do you define success when the machine is basically grading its own homework?
And this brings us to the most actionable part of our deep dive today. Like, if you take nothing else away from this discussion, let it be this. You must stop obsessing over in-platform vanity metrics.
I assume by vanity metrics you mean things like cost per click, click-through rate, time on site.
Exactly. Those are proxy metrics. They were useful when you managed the levers because they told you if your manual adjustments were actually working. But you don't manage the levers anymore.
Right.
Your new operating rule is to ruthlessly tighten your measurement on real, tangible business outcomes.
So how does a business owner practically do that tomorrow morning?
First, you have to audit what you are telling the AI to optimize for. The algorithm is incredibly obedient, but it's also entirely literal.
Literal in what way?
Well, if you set your campaign objective to traffic, the AI will find you the cheapest possible clicks on the internet. It will flood your site with bots or people who accidentally click with their thumb while scrolling. Your cost per click will look absolutely amazing, but your bank account will be empty.
Because you fed it a terrible conversion signal. You told the AI that a random click was a success.
Precisely. To survive this shift, you have to feed the system final closed-won revenue data. You have to implement CRM tracking so that when a lead actually turns into a paying customer offline, that data is pushed immediately back into Meta or Google.
Right, completing the loop.
Exactly. You're no longer managing a digital ad campaign. You're managing a business outcome. You're managing the cash register, not the billboard.
Oh, I love that framing. You manage the cash register, not the billboard. So what does this all mean for you listening? We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started with AC Hampton, showing us that low-friction models like drop shipping are vital validation vehicles. They allow you to test your inputs, your messaging, your offers with small, reversible bets.
And we saw why those tests are mandatory now. Platforms like Google with AI Max, Meta, and even OpenAI, they're actively forcing us into an automated future. They're taking away the manual control knobs and demanding that we focus entirely on the quality of our ingredients.
Right. And if you feed the system rotten ingredients, Gemini's proactive screening will catch it immediately, which is exactly why 8.3 billion ads were blocked before they even ran last year.
Yep.
The execution bar has never been higher, which is driving this massive consolidation in tools. Platforms like Canva are integrating agentic AI to give you an all-in-one engine to create, launch, and measure those inputs quickly. And ultimately, it means you have to abandon proxy metrics in favor of tracking hard revenue.
Which leads me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with today. Something to just sort of mull over as you look at the future of your own career or your own business.
Let's hear it.
We've established that AI platforms are entirely optimizing the middle layer. The algorithms are handling the bidding, the targeting, the placement. Soon, tools like Canva will handle the bulk of the asset creation.
Everything in the middle is automated.
Exactly. So if the middle is automated, your ultimate, uncopyable competitive advantage in the future will simply be the fundamental quality, uniqueness, and utility of what your business actually sells.
Wow, let that sink in.
When the marketing becomes entirely automated, the product itself becomes your only real marketing.
That's a great way to put it.
If your product is generic or your service is easily replicable, no AI in the world can save you because your competitors have the exact same AI tools optimizing their exact same generic products.
Right.
But if what you offer is deeply valuable, truly unique, and highly validated by real-world testing, these automated systems will find your customers faster and cheaper than a human ever could.
It's a profound shift in perspective. You know, we spend so much time stressing out that the car doesn't have a steering wheel anymore. We panic about the loss of the stick shift and the clutch. But maybe we need to stop worrying about how the car is being driven and start focusing entirely on making sure we actually have a destination worth driving to. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.